Good afternoon. My name is Armando Ariano. I am the radio hour producer with the Lab Learning Action Buffet. Doña Ana Community College and the lab are partners on a Humanities Action Lab project funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, among others. It is coordinated by personnel at Rutgers University in Newark, New Jersey, and supported by Rutgers University's School of Arts and Sciences, Newark, Express Newark. Today, I'm joined by Wilmarie Medina-Cortes, the coordinator of the HAL Humanities Action Lab Climates of Inequality Fellowship. Thank you, Wilmarie, for agreeing to be interviewed.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I
it's great.
appreciate it.
Yes. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up, just things like that, and then like your current and previous role with HAL?
Yeah, so I was born in Puerto Rico, and I lived there for a couple years of my life. And then my parents and we moved to Chicago. We had a lot of family here, so it was easy to transition from one place to another because of that. And so naturally, I've just lived in Chicago for my whole life. I did a lot of my schooling here. So I did my undergrad at like Roosevelt University here. And I recently completed my master's degree at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And it's there sort of where I was introduced to the Humanities Action Lab. I started off as a student in one of the classes that was funded by or supported by the Humanities Action Lab for their first Climates of Inequality project, which was called Climates of Inequality, Stories of Environmental Justice. And I worked with Rosa Cabrera, who's the director of the Rafael Cintrón Ortiz Latino Cultural Center on campus, where they created a local story. I wasn't part of that, but they ended up creating a local story. And I helped facilitate some of like the social media of that local story because it was COVID and things were not as they are then or now.
It was all remote.
Yeah, it was all remote. Yeah, so we had to accommodate to that new normal. So that's sort of where I got introduced to HAL, and I was lucky enough to continue with the Humanities Action Lab in a different role in my second year, where I was the student fellow for the next Climates of Inequality project, which is called Climates of Inequality and the COVID Crisis, Building Leadership at Minority Serving Institutions. And so this is sort of where I took on a little bit of a larger role, mentoring students in podcasting, working with Rosa on the project, and having a little bit of a larger role. And then I was introduced to the HAL Hub through that, taking a role in some of the meetings and getting to know some of the staff here.
I heard a rumor that are you gonna be a doctor, Wilmarie?
I would like to. So I'm working on my doctoral applications as we speak. So I would really love to continue to pursue my education through that kind of degree.
Yeah, no, this is a youth-based radio show, so we try to target lots of youth. So it's good to be like, hey, youth, like you can be doctors too, and everything you want here on our end. But Wilmarie, could you tell us a little bit more about what the Chicago team is doing for the HAL project?
I certainly can. So the Chicago team ended up focusing on the environmental injustices in a community called Little Village, or La Villita, which is a predominantly Mexican neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. And it's a neighborhood that's full of polluting industries. So we're talking about big corporations that have been here for very long periods of time, polluting the air, polluting the water. And so we partnered up with two community organizations, Alianza Americas and Little Village Environmental Justice Organization, to try to understand a little bit more about the community's perspective and history, fighting these injustices and sort of living in these areas. So we talked to community members in what we call a story circle. And we used questions and objects and images to sort of build connections between environmental justice, climate change, immigration, labor, food traditions, food adaptations. And then we're using all of that to create a stories and recipe book, but students in the class were also able to use those stories to make different media. So they made podcasts, they made a video, they made a zine, they made an infographic. And so that's sort of been the biggest focus of our project in Chicago.
That's pretty cool. And so when we were at HAL, we got to see your project amongst all the other projects in the, I guess it's a museum exhibition. That's kind of like the style. It's like a style, exhibition style that you guys chose for the presentations, right?
A little bit, yeah. So I mean, Rosa Cabrera, the director of the Cultural Center and the lead on this project, she has a museum background. So I think a lot of the things that we take with us in the ways we do are sort of influenced by how do you engage people in dialogue, and how do you communicate all these like big stories into things that are digestible for people, like images and audio.
Yeah. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about like, so I got to see it since I was there at the HAL, but could you give our listeners more like what we saw? Like, I don't know how to describe that very well. When we went into the downstairs part and we saw everybody, that's an exhibition, right? Or like,
oh yes. So the Climates of Inequality.
The Climates of Inequality, because that's cohort 1 and we're cohort 2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're the second group.
Yes.
And so the first group and others who are not in this current version of the project that you're in participated in creating what we called local stories. So faculty, so professors had classes that connected to this where they collected, sort of like different types of media, different types of stories. They collaborated with community partners. And it was all put together in this really interesting exhibition or exhibit that travels across the country. And so when we saw it in Newark, there's sort of like multimedia exhibits where they're like little like partial octagon, hexagon nooks where you can interact with like different videos, different VR headsets, different graphics that the groups created all around their local story. And so I think I mentioned it, but it's like 21 different locations across and beyond the US that were able to have their frontline communities and their social justice issues or environmental justice issues highlighted in this exhibit.
Nice. Do you know where the exhibit is currently? Because it's already been like a month since we convened in Newark, so I'm sure it has a new home by now.
Yeah, it's actually just this week on the 12th. It opened up at the Arizona Historical Society with our partners there, the Arizona Historical Society and Arizona State University.
Oh, okay.
So it's currently there until December. It's actually in Tempe.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I pronounced that correctly. Yeah.
No, that's Tempe. Yeah, I think it's like a part of Phoenix. I don't know. So it's one of those like you get into the details and you get there.
It's in the Southwest. Yes. So it's not close, but not far.
That's exciting. So it's there till December. You said.
Till December. Yeah, at the Arizona Heritage Center at Papago Park.
Nice.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So Wilmarie, could you tell us what your hopes are for the future in terms of efforts like HAL and all of the like programs that we're part of?
Yeah. So I think for me and my perspective, I think the biggest thing about the future of like programs like HAL and projects like this is to really highlight the stories of frontline communities and the social justice issues that they're facing. And I think beyond that, or including that, I think we want to really build, or it's important to build connections across these issues, because a climate issue or an environmental justice issue is connected to a racism issue. It's connected to an economic issue, a gender issue, a class issue. So I think not only highlighting these stories, but showing those connections is really important if we want to continue to make change in our world.
Yes, I agree. And Wilmarie, what kind of suggestions do you have for our listeners who'd like to find out more about the HAL project?
I would first welcome everyone to visit our website, climatesofinequality.org, where you can see the virtual portion of the exhibit if you're not able to travel it, and explore those local stories and all the different media and and images and stories that students, professors, and community partners created. And I would also welcome everyone to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And our handle is at HAL_COI. And there we post news related to our partners' projects, any updates, and you can also, follow where the exhibition is traveling to.
Nice. Sounds good. Wilmarie, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts on these important issues that we've talked about and convened about. You can find more information about the HAL project at humanities-actionlab.org. That's a good website for you guys as well, right?
Yes, definitely.
Perfect. And you can find more information about the Learning Action Buffet Lab at lablc.org. But yes, thank you and take care.